I knew about the affair before anyone told me. I just didn't expect it to be with my sister. The first time I noticed something was off, it wasn't dramatic. There were no whispered phone calls or late-night disappearances. It was a look. One of those small, almost forgettable glances that lingers half a second too long. I remember standing in my own kitchen, watching the two of them laugh at something I hadn't heard, and feeling strangely outside of it. I told myself I was being paranoid. My sister had always been close to us. She came over on Sundays, stayed for dinner, borrowed my sweaters without asking. My husband liked her. That was normal. I liked that they got along. It made everything feel easier. But ease can blur boundaries if you're not paying attention. There was a familiarity in the way they spoke to each other, a rhythm that didn't include me, inside jokes that formed quickly, small touches that could still be explained away, a hand on his arm when she laughed, him refilling her glass before she asked, each moment harmless on its own. Together, they formed something I couldn't quite name. I started watching them the way you watch a movie you've already guessed the ending to, not hoping to be wrong, just bracing for confirmation. What unsettled me most wasn't jealousy. It was the calm. I didn't explode. I didn't accuse. I folded laundry. I hosted dinners. I listened. Somewhere inside, a quiet voice kept saying, "Pay attention." My sister and I have always been different. She's magnetic, effortlessly warm. People lean toward her without realizing it. I've always been steadier, less obvious. In our childhood, that difference felt harmless. As adults, it felt sharper. I caught myself comparing the way she moved through a room, the way he responded when she spoke. I hated that instinct immediately. It made me feel small, insecure in a way I hadn't been in years. One evening, after she left, I asked him casually if he thought she'd seemed tired lately. It was a harmless question, a test wrapped in concern. He looked at me for a second too long before answering. That pause sat with me long after the conversation ended. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed something concrete, proof that I wasn't inventing tension where there wasn't any. So I started noticing patterns. When she texted, how quickly he replied, the way his phone tilted slightly away from me without him realizing it. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always feel explosive at first. Sometimes it feels like erosion, slow, patient, almost polite. And the hardest part wasn't the possibility that my husband wanted someone else. It was the possibility that my sister did too. Once the suspicion settled in, it changed how I moved through my own home. I became quieter, more observant. I stopped asking casual questions because I didn't trust my voice not to shake. They weren't reckless. That almost made it worse. Nothing obvious, nothing undeniable. Just a slow shift in energy whenever the three of us were together. I would catch them sharing a look that ended too quickly when I entered the room. Conversations would soften when I walked in, as if I'd interrupted something unfinished. I kept telling myself that if there were something real between them, I would feel it clearly. Instead, I felt suspended, like I was waiting for a storm that hadn't decided whether to form. One afternoon, I borrowed her laptop because mine had died. I wasn't searching. I wasn't prepared for what I found. a message thread open, my husband's name at the top. The words weren't explicit. They didn't have to be. The tone was intimate in a way that bypassed denial completely. Shared memories that didn't include me. References to moments I didn't remember happening. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I just stared at the screen and felt something heavy settle into place. It wasn't shock. It was recognition. Like my instincts had finally been given permission to exist. I closed the laptop carefully, sat there for a long time. The room felt smaller than usual, the air heavier. I tried to measure my breathing so I wouldn't spiral into something loud or irreversible. Anger would have been easier. Anger has direction. What I felt was colder. I replayed every dinner, every shared holiday, every time she'd hugged me goodbye while knowing something I didn't. The betrayal wasn't just romantic. It was layered, personal. Childhood memories tangled up in adult deception. When he came home that evening, I studied him differently, not searching for guilt, searching for familiarity. I wanted to see if I still recognized the man I married. He kissed my cheek the way he always did, asked about my day. Ordinary gestures delivered with steady hands. That steadiness hurt more than if he'd been nervous. I realized then that the real fracture wasn't just between us as a couple. It was between who I believed they were and who they were choosing to be. And I wasn't sure which version I was about to confront. Everything after that felt inevitable. I didn't confront them together. I couldn't bear the symmetry of that scene. I asked my sister to come over first. I told her I wanted to talk. Nothing urgent, just us. She arrived with the same easy smile she's always worn, the one that used to make me feel safe. For a second, I almost lost my nerve. We sat at the kitchen table where we used to do homework as teenagers, whispering about other people's mistakes. I wondered if she remembered that, if she felt the weight of history pressing down the way I did. I didn't accuse her immediately. I asked her how she'd been, if she was happy, if there was anything she wanted to tell me. She held my gaze calmly, too calmly. When I mentioned the messages, her expression shifted, not into shock, not into apology, just into something resigned, as if she'd known this moment would arrive eventually. That quiet acceptance cut deeper than denial ever could. She said it just happened, that it wasn't planned, that they didn't mean for it to go this far. The phrases sounded rehearsed, like lines borrowed from someone else's story. I listened without interrupting, because interrupting would have required energy I didn't have. What I wanted was for her to say she'd stopped it, that she'd chosen me. Instead, she said she hadn't known how to. Later that night, I confronted my husband. There was no yelling, no shattered glass, just 3 words. I know everything. He didn't ask what I meant. That told me enough. He tried to explain it as confusion, as loneliness that crept in unnoticed. He said he never meant to hurt me. I believed that part. Intent doesn't erase impact. What struck me most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how ordinary they both seemed while explaining it, as if the gravity of it hadn't fully landed for them yet, as if I was the only one standing in the rubble. I gave him 2 weeks to find somewhere else to stay. He asked if we could talk about it, work through it. I told him there was nothing left to work through. The decision had already been made the moment he chose her. My sister tried to call 14 times in 3 days. I didn't answer. On the 15th call, I finally picked up. Not because I forgave her, because I needed her to hear me say it clearly. You're my sister. That will always be true. But I don't know if you get to be in my life anymore. She cried, asked if there was anything she could do. I told her the truth. You already did it. I told our parents a month later, not because I wanted them to choose sides, but because I was tired of protecting people who hadn't protected me. My mother cried quietly. My father didn't speak for a long time. My sister wasn't invited to Christmas that year. The divorce took 9 months, longer than I expected, shorter than it felt. He moved in with her 2 weeks after the papers were signed. I guess they didn't have to hide anymore. That clarity hurt in a different way. People ask me if I'm okay now. I tell them I'm better. That's not the same as healed, but it's something. I learned that some betrayals don't have explanations that make them easier. They just are. And survival isn't about understanding why. It's about deciding you're worth more than the version of love that required you to disappear. I don't talk to either of them anymore. Some doors close quietly. This one did, and I'm still here, standing on the other side of it, breathing